Look at this. We are currently directing nature's most basic building blocks with a precision that would have seemed impossible a century ago. Between CRISPR gene editing and autonomous AI, we are exercising a level of sovereignty over the material world that was once reserved for the divine. But this capability is born from a science that treats the universe as a machine that functions, yet remains morally indifferent. We can calculate how to alter a genome or automate a decision, but our equations are silent on the question of what we should do with that ability. We often explain this silence by telling a specific story. The popular narrative claims that scientific mastery required us to abandon the religious constraints of the Middle Ages, allowing us to finally resume the rational inquiry started by the Greeks. This story of a clean break is more than just an oversimplification. It's a distraction. By treating our scientific power as something that appeared only after we escaped the past, we lose sight of the specific ethical framework that allowed this power to be built in the first place. The historian Edward Grant spent his career dismantling this image of a dark age. He showed that the medieval period wasn't an intellectual parenthesis, but a centuries-long laboratory for the transmission and transformation of knowledge. Medieval universities, created under Christian authority, were actually centers of constant debate. Scholars fiercely contested theories of motion, space, and time, developing the formal logic that would eventually support the scientific revolution. Pioneers like Galileo and Newton did not work in a vacuum. They stood on a foundation built by forgotten medieval giants like John Buridan and Nicole Oresme, men who used the university system to question and refine the very physics the modern world would eventually transform. If the medieval university gave us the institutional method for science, we have to look deeper to see if that same culture provided the moral compass we've since discarded. To find the root of our current ethical paralysis, we have to go back to where the medieval mind began. That search leads to the Hellenized Mediterranean. As the philologist Werner Jaeger observed, early Christianity and Greek philosophy were never isolated bubbles. They merged in a world where the search for God was inseparable from the search for reason. Plato's Timaeus introduced an idea defining the West. The cosmos possesses an intelligible, mathematically expressive order, shaped toward the good. The Stoics expanded this into the Logos, a universal rational principle penetrating the universe, uniting humanity in a community of shared rationality. In this ancient view, the rationality of the universe and the ethics of the human person were the same thing. To understand how the world worked was to understand how a person should live. Early Alexandrian Christians adopted this logos and identified it with Christ. This provided the methodology to synthesize their spiritual tradition with the most advanced natural philosophy of the era. They introduced a radical distinction. The world is rational, but it is not God. It is a separate creation. This made the universe safe for science. Because nature wasn't divine, it could be observed, measured, and studied without violating the sacred. Because this creation was the work of a rational logos, the material world was viewed as a reality worthy of systematic investigation, moving it beyond a mere shadow to be escaped. This specific synthesis, that the world is rational, separate from God, and inherently good, was the seed. It created the intellectual conditions where systematic observation didn't just feel possible, it felt like a duty. During the scientific revolution, figures like Galileo and Newton successfully used this inheritance. They operated on the ancient conviction that the universe was a book written in the language of mathematics, waiting to be read. But as science advanced, we kept the confidence in the world's intelligibility while we discarded the other half of the inheritance. We held on to the math, but let go of the conviction that knowledge must be oriented toward the good. The result is a global culture that can rewrite the biological future of a species while struggling to define why that species has inherent value. We have acquired the power of the logos without the responsibility of the good. Our current anxiety over AI and gene editing isn't caused by a lack of data. It is the sound of a civilization realizing it has lost the ethical half of its own intellectual DNA. As we confront autonomous systems and genetic modification, it's becoming clear that technical proficiency cannot solve the moral questions it creates. Science can tell us what we can do, but it cannot protect the dignity of the person. Navigating this era doesn't require us to choose between progress and tradition. It requires us to recognize that true progress is only possible when we reunite technical capability with the ancient commitment to universal dignity. We can combine the systematic rigor of the scientific method with the conviction that our knowledge must serve the good. Our future depends on reclaiming the full inheritance, the understanding that the universe isn't just to be mastered, but served with responsibility.